What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the important stats, as well as best attachments and class setups for every gun in Modern Warfare. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the Kilo 141. Now, the Kilo 141 is actually based off of the HK433. This is a German rifle that's chambered in 5.56, and in Modern Warfare, it has a damage profile of 28, 23, 18, which is almost identical to the M4A1. It deals 18 damage at long range compared to the M4's 19 damage. But in either case, this is going to be a 4, 5, or 6-shot kill in core game modes, and always a 2-shot kill to the body in hardcore, although you can get a 1-shot kill with a headshot in hardcore modes. Speaking of headshots, we get a headshot multiplier of 1.49, and this gives us a headshot damage profile of 43, 34, 28, and with this it essentially means one single headshot mixed in with body shots will always be helping you. When it comes to rate of fire, this is 779 rounds per minute, which is pretty moderate for an assault rifle. It's not really fast, but it's not really slow. And this gives us a time to kill potential of 231 milliseconds up close, and that will drop down to a 385 millisecond time to kill in the 6-shot kill range. Now, if we land a headshot in our 4-shot kill range, we can reduce our time to kill potential down to 154 milliseconds, which is very, very fast. Moving on to ranges, as you can see here, our 4-shot kill range extends out to a pretty good distance at about 30 meters. This is a little bit better than the M4A1. Then our 5-shot kill range extends out to 50 meters, and after 50 meters, it drops off to a 6-shot kill. With suppressors, the lightweight suppressor will reduce all of our ranges by 25%, and the monolithic suppressor increases our ranges by 7.5%. As for hardcore, like I said, it's going to be a 2-shot kill to the body at all ranges. Moving on to hipfire, the Kilo has pretty standard hipfire. It's exactly the same as the M4, AK, M13 SCAR, as well as the Odin, and it's a pretty decent hipfire spread. For idle sway, as you can see here, it does move very slightly while aiming down sight, but it is a very slow-moving type of idle sway, so it's really not that bad. This is a very accurate gun when it comes to that. Speaking of accuracy, let's get into the recoil, and as you can see here, this thing kicks just a little bit upwards and to the left. Now, the kick to the left is a little bit strange. Most guns in Call of Duty will kick upwards and to the right, so it is something you have to get used to, but once you get used to that, this is an extremely accurate gun with very little recoil. Moving on to our aim down sight time, this is 267 milliseconds, which is not the best out of the assault rifles, but it's also not the worst. It's kind of right in between. Same thing goes to our sprint out time. This is 267 milliseconds, which is standard for the assault rifles, and our super sprint out time, or tactical sprint out time, is 400 milliseconds, which again is standard for assault rifles. Our magazine capacity with the Kilo is 30 rounds with 60 in reserve, and our reload add time is pretty solid for assault rifles at just 1.34 seconds. Now, if you wanted to speed this up, you could use the sleight of hand weapon perk, which will cut your reload time down to 0.95 seconds. And finally for stats, we have our movement speed, which is a little bit slower than a bunch of the other assault rifles at 93.5%, and our aim down sight stray speed is also just a little bit slower than something like the M4 at 47%. So that pretty much covers it for all of the important stats of the Kilo 141, but I also wanted to go through the barrel attachments, since barrel attachments do have a pretty big effect on the guns in this game, and they are unique to each individual gun. So first up, we have the Syngard Arms 16.6-inch SOCOM barrel. And with this increases your damage ranges by 30%, which is a really solid increase. And on top of that, you get added bullet velocity, which will make hitting moving targets at longer ranges a lot easier. And also it helps with your recoil control a bit, which if we have a look at it right here, you can see there is a little bit of an improvement to your recoil. I'm not sure that's really necessary with the Kilo, but this does help a little bit in that area. The downside to using this barrel though is we do get a very slight reduction to our aim down sight speed. All it does is it adds 1 frame to your aim down sight time, which really isn't that big of a deal if you're using this on its own. But of course, if you stack this with other attachments that have a negative impact on your aim down sight speed, then things could get out of hand for you when it comes to your aim down sight time. Moving on to the next barrel, this is the 19.8-inch Prowler barrel. And with this one, we get a 45% increase to our damage ranges, which is amazing. And we also still get that added bullet velocity, and it does help with our recoil, as you can see here. However, this one also has more downsides to it. With this one, you add 2 frames to your aim down sight time, which is starting to get a lot more noticeable. And the big thing here is it reduces your overall movement speed by 4%. So this essentially becomes like an LMG at that point. So while this barrel does have a lot of power to it, it's also got some pretty big downsides. But this brings us to the final barrel that we have for the Kilo, and this is the Syngard Arms Whisper barrel. So with this one, it has an integrated suppressor, so you get that suppressor effect, keeps you off the radar as well as the compass. And it also increases your bullet velocity, which, like I said earlier, this will help you with hitting your targets that are moving at longer ranges. The downside to this is a reduction to your aim down sight speed, and all this one does is it adds 1 frame to your aim down sight time, so again, very slight change on its own, but you do have to be careful when stacking it with other attachments. Now, before we get into the example classes, I do want to go over one other set of attachments for the Kilo, because these do play a pretty big role for this gun, unlike many of the other guns in the game, and this is the extended mag attachments. So with the Kilo, we actually have the option for 3 different types of extended mags. We have the 50 round extended mag, the 60 round extended mag, and the 100 round drum magazine. So for all of these, the positive is obviously the increased magazine capacity, and the negatives are a reduction to your aim down sight speed as well as a reduction to your movement speed. With the 50 round magazine, there is no measurable change to your aim down sight time at 60 frames per second, so don't worry about that affecting your aim down sight time. And with movement speed, it reduces your movement speed by about 1%, so pretty minor decrease to your movement speed. 50 round magazine, totally fine to use. The 60 round magazine is actually a similar story. Once again, there is no measurable change to your aim down sight speed at all with the 60 round magazine. But with this one, we get a roughly 3% reduction to our movement speed. So that's where it starts to become a little bit more noticeable, but it's still very tolerable at that point. So a 60 round magazine is also just fine to use in my opinion. Now let's get into the 100 round magazine. This one does increase your aim down sight time by 1 frame, so it does slow your aim down sight speed down a little bit. But that's not the problem with the 100 round magazine. The problem is the impact it has on your movement speed. You get an 8% reduction to your movement speed while using this, which means with the 100 round magazine, you will move slower than all of the LMGs in this game by a noticeable margin. This thing slows you down a massive amount, and therefore I would be a little bit hesitant to use the 100 round magazine. I just don't feel the extra 40 rounds compared to the 60 round magazine is worth that massive reduction to your movement speed that is very, very noticeable. So as a result, I do treat the 100 round magazine as kind of a novelty attachment. But with that out of the way, we're finally ready to start getting into some great builds with this gun. And first up, we have my favorite setup for the Kilo 141. This is with the Simgard Arms 16.6 inch barrel. We've got a reflex sight, sleight of hand, stippled pistol grip, as well as the 60 round extended mag. This particular setup is just balanced so nicely. It dominates at mid to somewhat longer ranges. The stippled pistol grip helps with your aim down sight and sprint out time, so it still holds its own in close quarter situations as well. We got a fast reload, a 60 round magazine, lots of starting ammo because of that 60 round magazine, and we can really stretch out and hit our targets accurately with this particular setup. If I had to choose just one way to run the Kilo 141 for the rest of this game's life cycle, this would be it. And bringing that exact setup into an example class for you guys, this one's designed around ground war. For this, our secondary doesn't really matter, it's whatever your preference is. I just threw a Desert Eagle on there. For our perks, we've got EOD, Kill Chain, as well as Shrapnel. And the reason we use Shrapnel is because we're also using Thermite, and this will give us 2 of those Thermites so we can take out tanks really, really easily in the ground war mode. And finally on that class, we do have a Stun Grenade just to top it all off. This right here is an excellent ground war setup. You can get the high kill streaks very, very easy with this, and it's just such a versatile setup. This brings us to the next setup that I have for you guys, and this is more of an aggressive, stealthy sort of a build, so you want to try and get up close and personal in the enemy's flank, but it can still stretch out at decent range because it is the Kilo 141. With this, we are using the Whisper Barrel, so we will have that integrated suppressor. We're also using the no stock attachment, or lack of attachment, which does help quite a bit with our mobility. We've got Sleight of Hand on there once again, just because it's such a good weapon perk. We also have that stippled pistol grip because we are going to be in close quarters and it's good to snap on a target as fast as possible. And finally, once again, we are wrapping this up with a 60 round magazine. Taking that into an example class, once again, use whatever secondary you want on that. For perks, we've got EOD once again because as we're flanking enemies, we will be running into claymores, so we want to survive those claymores. Obviously, we've got the Ghost perk because this is a stealth setup, and we're using Battle Hardened as well. For our lethal on this, we've got a C4, and our tactical is going to be a Stun Grenade. So if you're trying to get aggressive with the Kilo 141, this is the preferred way that I'd like to run it. And finally, this brings us to the last setup that I wanted to share with you guys, and this is a full-on novelty type of loadout. It's just for like messing around and having fun. Part of it is just because it looks so ridiculous. It's not a highly competitive setup, but it is a fun setup to use. So with this, we've got that 100 round drum magazine, and to compensate for that massive loss to your movement speed, we're also going to be using the no stock attachment, which does cancel a lot of that movement speed reduction out. We've also got the granulated rear pistol grip. This will help bring some of that aiming stability back because by using the no stock attachment, our aiming stability goes downhill. so we still want some stabilization while aiming down sight. We've got the FMJ weapon perk because this is a spray and pray kind of a gun, and sometimes you just want to spray through cover. And finally, we've got the 1 milliwatt laser, which will just help with hip fire up close. Taking that into a class setup, we've got an overkill setup here with the R90 shotgun on there, so we can spray and pray at longer ranges with our kilo, and then if somebody gets up close and personal, if we've got the time, we swap over to our shotgun to take them out. We've got hardline for our tier 2 perk, and our tier 3 perk is amped, which will just allow us to swap over to that shotgun a lot faster. Our lethal with this is going to be a claymore, because sometimes you just want to get set up or have something covering your back while you're trying to spray other people down. And our tactical is, once again, just going to be a stun grenade. You can throw whatever on there, though. That's just kind of my default tactical that I have on. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the Kilo 141. Personally, I really do enjoy this gun quite a bit. This is the ACR of Modern Warfare. And the reason I say that is this actually has an identical fire rate to the ACR from Modern Warfare 2. It's super accurate and just an awesome all-around sort of a gun. Of course, though, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the Kilo 141? And also, which gun would you like me to cover next? I'm thinking about covering like 1 or 2 more of the more popular guns that people really want to see, and then from there I will start going in some sort of a logical order through the rest of the weapons. Also, if you guys have missed the previous episodes, so far I've covered the M4A1 as well as the MP5. I will leave a link to the playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.